Praise God, I'm Sister Martina, and we are going to talk today about Pope Paul VI. He governed the church between 1963 and 1978, 15 years, and was certainly from all these modern popes the one who suffered the most. When Pope John the 23rd died in the middle of the council, the election of the new pope was more or less obvious to anyone because the then Cardinal Giovanni Battista Montini, Archbishop of Milan, was the obvious person to succeed the last pope in the sense of taking on the work of the council. Giovanni Battista Montini was an Italian, son of a middle-class family, very intellectual people, journalists, lawyers, people that had a lot to do with social issues, and a very pious family. And he was a highly intellectual man who loved philosophy, literature, was a doctor also. And he spent most of his life in the Vatican. This circumstance, the fact that he always lived very much in his family and in the Vatican, made his personality a little bit shy of things more violent in the world, so to say. He did, of course, help Pius XII during the war. He helped him a lot. He was a very, very kind man, Paul VI, and a person who could suffer with the suffering of others. But he more or less was used to dealing with good people, and he was himself certainly a people of extreme kindness. And he was, in this sense, poor him, unprepared to face really bad things and violent things and aggression. He always suffered very much because of these later on as a pope. And his whole pontificate was, of course, dedicated to giving an end to the council, a good end, and then to applying the council, so to say, to the whole church. In church history, it is always so. Always after a council, especially when the council, of course, has disputes and disagreements inside it, there is the need for a long time after the council until everybody has correctly understood, accepted, and until all of this is well applied to the church. In the times of the antiquity, sometimes 100, 200 years, because communications was also very different. And so it's no surprise that the times after the Vatican II were very turbulent times, and poor Pope Paul VI was the one God chose, a kind of martyr in the sense to carry on his shoulders all these troubles. The fact that he, under pressures from every side, under even violent aggressions from people in the church, cardinals and bishops have criticized him publicly and very aggressive, from the right, from the left. The fact that he lived in very difficult times, political times, also the 60s and the 70s, and he never compromised 1 millimeter of what he knew was the faith and the morals of the church, makes him very clearly a man of heroic virtue and a great saint. It's enormous pleasure for us now to be able to call him Saint Paul VI, and he suffered enormously under it, but went faithfully on his way in the middle, not letting himself go to the left or to the right, being faithful to the council, but to the council, not to what people spoke of the council, until his death, which was the death of really a martyr. I mean, he was exhausted when he died. And the best example for this is perhaps his famous encyclical from 1968, Humane Vitae, written about human sexuality and the use of the, at that time, new technical appearance of the contraception, artificial contraception methods. And it is a very short encyclical, very beautiful, very typical from him, full of kindness, full of beauty, full of hope, full of faith. It's a wonderful thing to read. But the aggressive critics that he got from every side. Of course, the traditionalists said he was weak, he was a coward because he allowed even to talk about these things or to write such an encyclical was in their eyes already something crazy. While the liberals said he was weak, he was a coward because actually he was saying that artificial anticonception is not accepted in the plans of God. And so the fact that he managed to stand in his way in the middle, the way of holiness, the way of really the church and God, makes him really a hero. I mean, a hero of faith, a hero of morals. A man that was shy, a man that was sometimes impulsive, sometimes emotional, a man that was much more an intellectual than a leader, didn't have this strength of John the 23rd, for example, but a man that inside in his heart had, in his soul, had a strength that is sometimes incredible to see. When we study a little bit the times of his pontificate, we can only be amazed of his courage and his fidelity. And because of it, we are today still, in the times of the council, still struggling to adapt the council well. But without him, this wouldn't have been possible at all. Without him, we wouldn't have the pontificates of John Paul II and Benedict and Francis. I mean, he was the man who suffered everything so that the others could come after him and build new things. Of course, all his interpretation of the council together with John the 23rd is to clean the church, so to say, of the many things that the church had culturally been accumulating during the last 200, 300, 400 years. There was many things which we still see today in some groups, and this is legitimate. Many cultural things, ways of praying, even pictures, ways of dressing, ways of doing things, a style, so to say, a style of piety that came from the 16th, 17th, 18th century that is very European on one side, can help many people, has helped many people, but doesn't correspond anymore to the international worldly church that we have today. You have to be somehow an European or European roots to understand this kind of piety. And the church of today is a totally international, not anymore centrally, mainly European church. And all these things can be, in this sense, sometimes a problem for people who are coming to the church or who are wanting to find the church, because one has the impression you have to be European to be Catholic, which of course makes no sense. The church was not born in Europe. It was born in Palestine among the Jews. The fact that for many centuries the church had with Europe much to do is only an accident in history. If we live more 5,000 years in the world, then probably this will be just an episode of church history. Of course, we are so used to it that we cannot imagine otherwise, but it is so. We have only to study a little bit of history. Generally, the traditionalists, they go back to the Council of Trent, the Tridentine Mass, and all the uses of the so-called Counter-Reformation of the Council of Trent. And they forget, of course, the 1,500 years before the Council of Trent. If the Council of Trent had authority to reform the liturgy, for example, so has the Vatican II the authority also. The reason for both of councils is the same, to bring the liturgy somehow to our days, to make it more comprehensible, organized, in order to evangelize people, to bring people to God. Paul VI had this very clear, let's stay with the essentials, let's go back somehow to the Holy Fathers, to the Apostles, For example, the orders, the religious orders, should go back not to the habit. This is for us here just an accident, but to the rule of the founder of the congregation, of the order. Let's renovate. Let's bring back what is essential and leave aside everything that can be changed, in order that the church, like John the 23rd had said, can really be open to all people, all cultures, all styles, all histories, just being faithful to the one main thing, which is, of course, Jesus Christ, and not the church uses politics and so on. And of course, he was done very aggressively attacked from all sides. This is a little bit what happens to Pope Francis today too. The liberals expect him to be a liberal. The conservatives, of course, are horrified because of many things he does. And he has in Paul VI a great model, and what he tries is exactly to be with the things that are somehow essential, and be open to other things. Of course, the popes are human. Paul VI also. That it may be that many things he could have done better. It may be that he made here and there some mistakes. They're not perfect. They're men just like us. But the ideal, the thing in his soul and in his heart was very clear. When he died, the world and the church were in a very, very, so to say, dark moment, a moment of fear, a moment of insecurity. This is the Cold War, of course. And his death was, so to say, a very sad death, in the sense of one sees a man who has suffered so much. But today we see the fruit of all his sacrifice, and it's really an enormous joy to be able to say, St. Paul VI, pray for us, pray for the church, give us the strength that you yourself had, and the clarity of faith and of morals. We see each other in our next video.